Hi there. I welcome you to this channel once again. This is Wisdom, your host, and it's always a pleasure to have you. I hope that you are able to learn one or two things from today's lesson. Today, we are looking at an overview of personality disorders, and this will bring an end to the series we've been doing on understanding personality. So today we want to examine personality disorders, just have an overview of what personality disorders are and the types that we have, what may be causing them, and we pick a lesson or two out of that. So, okay. That is fine. So when we talk about personality disorders, as the name would indicate, it is in reference to personality. And in basic terms, a disorder is anything that is not as is established within a certain given community or a certain level of uh, expectation within a particular enclave or society. So if something is not as would be the norm, then we'll say that it is abnormal. And disorders generally, when it comes to mental health disorders, we are looking at these challenges or issues that affect our everyday functioning. It affects your productivity. It affects your ability to contribute to your society. It affects your daily personal life, your social life, and a number of things. Now, when we talk about personality disorders, we've defined personality over and over. And when we examined the trait theories, we understood personality from that dimension. And when we looked at the behavioral theories as well, we understood the formation of personality through the conditioning approaches. The videos are in um, uh, the links that I would attach below. You can also go through the channel for those videos. I've placed the link to uh, the latest session we had on the behavioral theories app, so you can click on it and then share in that lesson after here. So basically, personality according to the DSM-5 refers to individual differences in characteristic patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. And we have explained that in the previous lessons. Now, if there are any challenges to a person's personality, if there are any changes that begin to make, the person deficient in a number of ways and affects their personal and interpersonal abilities of functioning, then we'll say that this person is showing symptoms of a personality disorder. So you don't jump to conclusions that based on the things that we'll talk about today, this person has this personality disorder. No. In clinical diagnosis, it involves a number of considerations aside the symptoms that we'll talk about. So this lesson is just to give you an overview of what personality disorders are and some of the symptoms so that you have some insight into those disorders that we'll talk about. One key thing to note is that just like personality is characterized by consistent ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving, patterns that have been established over time, personality disorders are also stable over time. So it's not occasional. The symptoms are consistent over a certain duration of the individual's life. So they are stable over time. That means they are chronic in nature, and they lead to distress or impairment in an individual's personal and interpersonal functioning. So you would find that it begins to affect the person's daily life. As I mentioned, their productivity in terms of their personal space and in their interaction with other people. And personality disorders are usually diagnosed during or after adolescence, not before, because the assumption is that in childhood, personality formation is still in progress and is still in its infancy stages. And especially with some trait theories, some psychodynamic theories and all that, we understand that personality formation is completed usually within the childhood period. But the behaviorist will tell us that, as we learned the last time, that personality formation is across the lifespan. And it is through conditioning, as we meet different situations and we are reconditioned and counter conditioned and all that, our personality keeps changing. So basically and generally, people will be diagnosed with a personality disorder with a focus on persistence after adolescence period or during the adolescence period into adulthood, rather than being diagnosed while you were a child. Although some of the disorders we'll talk about are typically found in children. Now, what definitions are there for personality disorder? How do we explain or define personality disorder? According to the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Health Practitioners, which is the key manual that guides the practice of mental health across the world, the major, guide that we have. It defines personality disorders as enduring, keyword, enduring pattern of inner experience and behavior that deviates markedly from the expectations of an individual's culture. So the key word in this words in this definition are enduring, deviates markedly, and culture. These are the key words I highlight in here. And that tells you that personality disorders, before someone would be said to have a particular personality disorder, then it means that the symptoms that are associated with whatever is happening to them has been consistently, stable over time. So it's enduring. It's something that is not temporal or shows itself once in a while. It's something that is seen consistently. It's an enduring pattern that has been established. And this pattern is abnormal, meaning in this case, it deviates from what the individual's culture is expected or has been established as the norm of a particular culture. And culture can be looked at in the respect of a particular group of people and what their norms are, or within the social context. If it's the school environment, there's a culture in the school. If it's a religious environment, there's a culture, there's a way of life of a certain group of people. So if the patterns that have been established in terms of thinking, feeling, and behaving deviate significantly from the expectations of an individual's culture, then we would classify that as a personality disorder. And these are related to the individual's personality, their thinking, their feeling, their behaving, as we have established previously. The second definition we get from the American Psychological Association, and it defines personality disorder as any group of disorders involving pervasive patterns, pervasive. So it keeps showing up, it's consistent, it's something that has engulfed the individual, so to speak. Pervasive patterns of perceiving, relating to, and thinking about the environment and the self that interfere with long-term functioning of the individual and are not limited to isolated episodes. So this expands the definition we gave earlier from the DSM-5. And I must say there's a new version of the DSM, which is the DSM-5 TR. But I'm still interested in the DSM-5. So, and not much is different in the DSM-5 TR. So, in this respect. So, according to the APA's definition, we see pervasive patterns as a key thing highlighting a personality disorder. So if it's not pervasive and it has not been established as a consistent way of behaving, then it will not qualify as a personality disorder. The DSM-5 gives minute or more specific details for diagnosis purposes, but this is not a lecture for that diagnostic purpose. This is just an overview to give anybody that is interested in understanding personality and an insight into personality disorders as well. And it relates to how we think about environment and the self and how that interferes with our long-term functioning. And these patterns are not limited to just one or two occasions here and there, scattered all across. It's consistent, and we see it happening in different situations across time and space. What are some of the causes or risk factors for personality disorders? We are unable to establish that this causes a particular personality disorder and all that, because personality disorders themselves are quite complex. And just as personality in itself is a complex, concept in terms of understanding its formation and what it really is, So personality disorders are quite difficult to diagnose even in clinical practice, because the symptoms, you see them overlapping here and there and being similar to other mental health disorders. But some factors have been identified as risk factors. So a risk factor will be anything that is makes you prone to getting a particular disorder. So these are some risk factors that make somebody prone to developing personality disorders. So we have the causes and risk factors of PD. The first one we talk about is genetic and biological factors. And it has been established, though not specific to which gene, studies are still ongoing. It's been established that there are some genetic relations between personality disorders that are seen amongst certain families. So it could be genetically, informed that somebody will develop a particular personality disorder, could be traced to maybe family dynamics where someone in the family has had it before or something. And twin studies have also established that there could be some genes that are responsible for personality malfunctions. The biological components, when we look at the brain structure and some alterations, it's been established that it could also contribute to personality disorder. So when we talk about borderline personality disorder, which is one of the personality disorders, there's been associations with the amygdala and certain malfunctions in there. The amygdala controls our emotions relating to fear and danger. So there have been some attributions to certain distortions or malfunctions when it comes to that emotion regulation center, the amygdala. Childhood trauma and abuse, people that have suffered trauma in childhood, abusive parents, and all kinds of abuse, verbal, physical abuse, and have had traumatic experiences in childhood, the death of their parents, or experience trauma. When they are not helped to overcome those trauma-related issues and abuse-related issues, they may go on to develop some personality disorders in adulthood. We'll talk about the avoidant personality disorders and a number of them that could be attributed to childhood trauma. So uh, childhood trauma and abuse could be a cause or risk factor when it comes to developing personality disorders. Then we have childhood attachment related problems. So these are issues of attachment. So how the individual, so as a child, what kind of attention they received, whether they were given the needed love and care and attention by the primary caregivers, their parents or guardians and all that. So if the individual develop insecure attachments, then they are likely, for instance, someone that develop insecure avoidant attachment during childhood could end up developing, an avoidant personality disorder um, and all that. So childhood attachment issues could lead to some personality disorders. And then finally, we talk about social, cultural, and environmental factors where an individual lived. And when we resort back to the behavioral theories and the bit about conditioning, environmental conditioning, we get to appreciate how the environment an individual lives in, the physical environment, the social environment, and all the factors therein, culture and all that. Putting that together, it could lead to very uh, unhealthy personality development growing up, aggression and conduct disorders that are characteristic of antisocial personality disorder. They could be influenced by social, cultural, and environmental factors. So these are some of the causes and risk factors associated with personality disorder. We cannot pinpoint that this is what is causing it, but these have been established as possible causes and risk factors for people that develop personality disorders. Now, the DSM, as I mentioned earlier, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, as used by mental health practitioners, tries to put the personality disorders under 10 subtypes. So it looks at it from a categorical dimension, putting it in categories, and that helps to make it easier to try and explain the disorders. And these 10 forms or subtypes are put into 3 clusters in the DSM-5. So you have cluster A, cluster B, and cluster C. And these clusters contain personality disorders that are similar in nature. They are similar in nature. In terms of some of the symptoms, they are similar. However, there's another major guide for mental health practitioners, the International Classification of Diseases, the ICD. And the ICD-11 looks at personality disorders in terms of their severity. So rather than classifying into subtypes, we rather want to look at it in terms of whether the person has a mild, moderate, or severe personality disorder, and which of there are a number of traits. So negative affective, dissocial, so the sociality, and ancastia, detachment, and disinhibition. These 5 are traits that would be looked out whether you have more of the negative affective for a particular type as described by the DSM and all that. So it will look at it in terms of severity and which of the traits are dominant in a particular person. But that is not our focus or interest in this lesson. So these are the 3 clusters that the DSM-5 puts personality disorders. We have the paranoid personality disorder, the schizoid personality disorder, and the schizotypal personality disorder under the cluster A. And these 3 are characterized by odd or eccentric symptoms. So more of fearful thinking and certain suspicions that are quite unusual. Then we have cluster B, dramatic and erratic, more aggressive, more dramatic kind of behaviors that are patterns that have been established. They are pervasive. So we have the antisocial personality disorder, the borderline personality disorder, the narcissistic personality disorder, and the histrionic personality disorder. Then under cluster C, we have the anxious or fearful. We have the avoidant, dependent personality disorders, and the obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And this is different from the OCD, obsessive compulsive disorders. These are two different things. Now, we'll talk about the first one, an overview of paranoid personality disorder. These are symptoms outlined in the DSM-5. I pick a few of them, and then we look at it briefly. The major thing about the paranoid personality disorder is that it involves pervasive distrust and suspiciousness of others. So as I mentioned, the first cluster is characterized by a lot of suspicion and fearful, thoughts about other people. So the paranoid is more about pervasive distrust and suspicion of others, believing that whatever motive that other people have is evil. So the person with paranoid personality disorder consistently over time in a pervasive way believes that people are evil and are planning evil towards them. So they are always suspicious and they distrust everybody and anybody. And they have unsubstantiated suspicion that others are exploiting, harming, or deceiving them. So if they are engaged in, so that's how the personality disorders we mentioned affect personal and interpersonal relationships. So they have a certain thought that whatever anybody is doing, engaged with them, the people are trying to dupe me. They are suspicious that, all the time, they feel that even if the person does not have such negative motives, in their mind, they always believe that people have exploitative motives and they're seeking to harm them or deceive them. They have unjustified, pervasive thoughts about the loyalty or trustworthiness of friends and associates. So, all going back to the distrust and suspicion that is pervasive. Even their friends, their associates, people that they are close with and all that, they are always suspecting the loyalty of those individuals. No matter how much you have shown yourself to be a loyal friend, they always have suspicions about your trustworthiness. They are reluctant to confide in other people because they fear that the information that they will share with the people will be used against them. And as I mentioned, let's be able to differentiate this with normal episodes of some of these symptoms here and there. Because as human beings, we would sometimes be cautious of sharing information because you think that someone may use it against you. But in these cases of personality disorders, these are pervasive, they are consistent, they are disruptive, they are affecting the person's everyday life, their productivity, and their interactions or social relationships. So the difference must be clear. They are suspicious of people, and for that matter, they will not want to share information because they are afraid that it will be used against them, even if that is not the case, as it were. They read hidden meanings into every remark that is made. Anything that happens, they are reading evil meanings. They are looking at deeper things that really do not exist. Hidden, threatening meanings into whatever happens. So if somebody passes a comment about something, they want to find a way of relating it to themselves and feeling that the person is planning something evil against them. And they are persistently having troubles with people. They struggle to forgive. and they get to hurt themselves a lot of times. And finally, has recurrent unjustified suspicions regarding the fidelity of spouse or sexual partner. So if this person is married or is in a relationship, they are always suspecting their spouse or their partner of cheating. So even if there's no evidence or there's no basis for suspicion, they are always suspicious that their partner is cheating. And that is quite at the abnormal level. So these are just pictures to depict it from verywellmind.com. So you find this woman and this man peeping through. It's like they are always suspecting that something evil is coming to happen. They have paranoid, thoughts, things that are not, really there. It's more about like delusional thoughts, and finding things as evil when nothing evil is actually happening. The second under cluster A is the schizoid personality disorder. And this is mainly characterized by a pattern of detachment, withdrawal from social relations, and a restricted range of expression of emotions in interpersonal settings. So individuals with schizoid personality disorders, you find that they are generally withdrawn. They don't like to engage in social interactions. They want to be by themselves alone. This is different from people that are introverts and prefer being by themselves rather than being extroverted. These are pervasive, consistent need for avoiding social relationships. They are detached from social, any social kind of engagement or belonging, and they are quite emotionless. They have a restricted range of expressing emotions during interpersonal setups. They neither desire or enjoy close friendships. They don't want to form any close friendships, including being close to their family members. It's quite, a pervasive detachment from close relations, including family members. They always want to be in a place alone, alone, alone. Take pleasure in few, if any, activities. Just a few activities they would want to engage in. They are not really excited by many things because they don't really want to be in interpersonal or social settings. They lack close friends or confidence other than first degree relatives. So typically, you will not find them having friends or people that they confide in, except for maybe relations or relatives, siblings that are the closest to them. So probably you could only find the mother or the father as somebody that they confide in, that they talk to. They will seldom be moved by praise or criticism. So they are indifferent to the praise and criticism of others. And that goes back to the restriction in terms of the expression of emotions. And finally, they show emotional coldness, detachment, and flattened affectivity, all going back to the expression of emotions, quite emotionless. So this is an image from addictiontreatmentservices.com that tries to depict that. So in social setups, so you can see all the faces in here, expressionless, emotionless, but with some marks, showing as though some are smiling and all that. But they really, in social settings, in interpersonal settings, you'd really rather not be there when it comes to schizoid personality disorder clients or patients. Then the last in the cluster A is the schizotypal. And schizotypal is typified by pervasive patterns of social and interpersonal deficits marked by acute discomfort, acute discomfort, with and reduced capacity for close relationships. So similar to the schizoid, the schizotypal is also associated with um, being uncomfortable with social and interpersonal settings. So individual, the schizotypal personality disorder um, are uncomfortable. They have quite distressing experiences when involved in social and interpersonal settings, and they really do not want to have close relations. They have unusual perceptual experiences, including bodily illusions. So, um, certain experiences that are not real. They find themselves, they could find themselves floating. They could have certain experiences of being in a certain world, So such hallucinations and delusions. Odd thinking and speech, they would have some problems in terms of their communication. Sometimes all that they are saying is vague, it's not really concrete. A lot of because of their unusual perceptual experiences, you'd find a lot of metaphorical, language and communication, things that are not really existent. They are metaphorical in nature, over elaborating things, exaggerating things, and being very stereotypical. Stereotypes, very, very common. They are suspicious or have paranoid ideation. So that's where we mentioned earlier that there are similarities in that cluster. The paranoid ideations would be seen in the schizotypal, the schizoid, and the paranoid personality, where they have suspicions of individuals and believing that they have evil intentions. And that is primarily why they are uncomfortable with social and interpersonal relations. They lack close friends or confidence other than first degree relatives, excessive social anxiety that does not diminish with familiarity. So, unlike other people where, if you are not comfortable in social gatherings, usually that kind of fear or discomfort would leave if you are surrounded by people that you know, or if over time you get to become more closer and familiar with the people around. With schizotypal personality disorders, you'd find that the individual, over time, even when they become familiar with the people, that excessive social anxiety, that fear does not leave, it does not diminish, and they have inappropriate or constricted affect, going back to expression of emotions and how they are not really, emotionally engaged when it comes to their interpersonal relationships. So you not find so much expression of joy and happiness and sadness. It's difficult to even detect what is exactly the emotional experience at a particular time. So these are symptoms of the schizotypal from very low mind. You can see the eyes running and checking around. That's suspicion. Bizarre behaviors that are based on the perceptual experiences that they have, the unusual experiences that they have of being in a certain high space, and all the hallucinations. Lack of close friends or confidence, very many superstitious beliefs. So they would typically have them have a lot of superstitions, um, suspicious attitudes towards others, and finally, excessive social anxiety that does not improve with familiarity. Then we have the antisocial personality disorders, antisocial. So we are now in cluster B, which is characterized by the erratic or dramatic symptoms. With antisocial personality disorders, characterized mainly by pervasive patterns of disregard for and violation of the rights of others. So people with antisocial personality disorders are basically lawbreakers. They violate the rights of others. They have disregard for rules and standards of living right, in respect of how society expects people to behave right and avoid um, disturbing the peace of others. So, as the name suggests, it's antisocial. So these are behaviors that violate the rights and the space of other people within the social context. They fail to conform to social norms. And this does not mean that anybody that is having conduct these related issues, they are um, aggressive and all that, has antisocial personality disorder. No. Um, they may, but it's not the case. It's not the fact that anybody in prison has antisocial personality disorder and all that. No. But these antisocial personality disorder uh, individuals would show a consistent, pervasive, chronic disregard for and the violation of the rights of others. They fail to conform to social norms and standards for good behavior. They are deceitful. They would consistently lie. They would have pseudonyms. So in they go to this community, they have this name, and they go and cause damage. They move to a different community, they have a different name. So it's difficult to even track them. So they use aliases or pseudonyms a lot. They like conning or defrauding other people. That's a symptom of antisocial personality disorder. So in terms of using the ICD severity range, you'd find that maybe some individuals would have more traits of maybe antisocial than other traits and all that. So in that case, you are looking at how much of certain traits are evidence in an individual rather than trying to put them in this particular group that you have this disorder, you have that disorder, and all. They are impulsive and they usually fail to plan ahead. They do things as and when they feel like doing. So impulsive actions. I feel it, I do it. That kind of, um, way of living. They are irritable and aggressive, involved in a lot of physical fights and assaults. Very, 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 erratic kind of behaviors. They are reckless and they disregard the safety of themselves and others. So that's why they are involved in a lot of aggression and um, things that are harmful to other people. And that is because they disregard the safety of themselves. They don't really care, and then the safety of others. Consistent irresponsibility, and finally, a lack of remorse. That is very typical of antisocial personality disorders. So, causing trouble, violating the rights of others, deceiving people, defrauding people. They show no sign of remorse. Usually, on a normal, when somebody is maybe convicted of a crime or something, they will show some remorse. Someone with antisocial personality disorder has no remorse or little remorse, as indicated by being indifferent or even trying to find justification for why they had to hurt somebody or mistreat the person or even steal from somebody. So I stole because rich people should not be living lavishly and all that. So someone with antisocial personality disorder would cause trouble, would break the rules and destroy other people, harm other people, and show no remorse for whatever has happened. So there's a picture that depicts that. So they break the rules. They don't live by the rules. They don't live by the rules. Then the next we have in cluster B is the borderline personality disorder. And the borderline personality disorder is characterized by a pattern of pervasive instability of interpersonal relationships, self-image, and affects, and marked impulsivity. So they try as much as possible to not feel left alone. This is similar to the dependent personality disorder we'll talk about later, but they make efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. They don't want to feel left alone. They don't want to feel that somebody has neglected them. So they will do whatever they can to make sure that you do not leave, whether it is real or they imagine it. They just don't want to, see that happen. It causes a lot of distress to them. A pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships. So these, if you are in a relationship, whether friendship, romantic relationship, marital relationship, these individuals show a lot of instability in terms of their relationship with you. It's quite, unstable, and they are quite demanding. And that is because there's that need to maintain presence. They just can't do with abandoning them. Anything that looks like you are neglecting them, you are avoiding them, is a source of distress. So it causes a lot of problems in their interactions or relationships with people. Identity disturbance, markedly and persistently unstable self-image or sense of self. And that explains why they try as hard as possible to avoid imagined or real abandonment, because of issues with their self-perception and self-image. Impulsivity in at least two areas that are potentially self-damaging. So in terms of spending, so whatever, get money, spend it anyhow, whatever I want, I feel like getting, anything that comes to mind, they go buy it. So impulse buying. Drug abuse, addiction, is something that, they just can't do without the drug. They just can't do without the substance. Impulsivity in some key areas of life, at least two areas of life. Then they have a lot of suicidal thoughts and a lot of suicidal behaviors, self-harming behaviors, very consistent or common. Then we have affective instability due to a marked reactivity of mood. So having to do with the expression of emotions, quite unstable, and quite impulsive in terms of anger, in terms of sadness. It's there's no real balance in terms of how they are emotionally evoked or aroused. They are quite reactive. So impulsivity, even when it comes to their emotions and feelings, and a chronic feeling of emptiness, feeling empty, feeling void, and that goes back to the 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 need to avoid any sort of abandonment, whether imagined or real. So the borderline personality disorder is characterized once again by instability in interpersonal relationships, poor self-image, inconsistent, emotional reactivity, and a lot of impulse behavior. So we have fear of abandonment, unstable, intense relationships, unrealistic or unstable self-image or sense of self. You have rapid mood changes. Can switch from this level to the other level in a moment. That is not bipolar disorder. That is something else on its own. But this is about personality disorders, and borderline personality disorder has a lot of rapid, impulsive changes in emotional expression because of the reactivity. Impulsive and dangerous behavior, so self-harming behaviors, repeated self-harm and suicide and all that. Then the next we have in cluster B is the narcissistic personality disorder. And this is characterized by a lot of self consciousness, feeling superior to every other person. So we say a pervasive pattern of grandiosity. So in fantasy or in behavior, a sense of importance that is out of place, a sense of importance that is unusual, that is self gratifying, that it's self elevated, and they have a need for admiration and a lack of empathy. They are not able to put themselves in other people's shoes, so to speak. They cannot see things from another person's perspective, to put it in a better way. So this is what characterizes somebody who is narcissistic. So you'd find some people with some of these symptoms. They may not have personality disorders. They may not be diagnosed with personality disorders, but they have some of these traits here and there. So in terms of the severity dimension, they may have mild symptoms of it, or moderate symptoms of any of them. But narcissistic persons are self elevated. They feel more important than they should feel they are. And they want people to admire them, praise them, and always approve of whatever they do. They are not able to see things from another person's perspective. They feel they are always right. They feel they are always right. So they have a grandiose sense of self-importance, and they exaggerate their achievements and talents. So that sense of feeling more superior or supreme that they actually are. They are preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success and power and brilliance and beauty and ideal love. They are in a world of their own. They feel, so they fantasize a lot about themselves. They believe they are so special and unique, and only unique people or special people can understand them. So they can only, work with special high status people, of a certain caliber, even if they are not in that kind of class in terms of socioeconomic status. Someone who has a narcissistic personality disorder is self-conscious, self-consumed, that they feel they are so special and unique, and they can only associate or be understood by special high status people. They are unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings or needs of others. That's the lack of empathy. And finally, they have a sense of entitlement. They have expectations of other people such that things should be done how they want it. They should be treated in a different way, in a special way. They should be given favorable treatment, and everybody should comply with their needs. So we should be at the beck and call of their needs. And that is what the narcissistic personality disorder is about. And then the last in the cluster B is the histrionic, a pervasive pattern of excessive emotionality and attention seeking. These people are emotional driven. They are always looking for attention. If they are within a particular group and they are not the focus of attention, the focus of praise, the focus of everybody's, attention, they feel uncomfortable. They want to be the center of attraction. So whatever they will do for people to pay attention to them, people to talk about them, that is what they will do. Excessive emotionality and attention seeking. They display rapidly shifting and shallow expression of emotions, quite unstable in their expression of emotions. Consistently use physical appearance to draw attention to self. And sometimes these people may have a history of self, image problems. And so one of the causes could be early childhood, or as they were growing up, that critical voice that they had when it comes to their beauty and all that. So they develop that sense of having to prove themselves and how good they are and how beautiful they are and all that. So you'd have consistent efforts to appear such that they can draw your attention by their physical appearance. Style of speech that is excessively impressionistic and lacking in detail. So in talking, in communicating, their focus is on trying to impress. So that what sets the histrionic apart is that need for attention, and that effort, that consistent, pervasive need to impress, and they are very emotional as such, although their expression of emotions are quite inconsistent. They are suggestible. That means they can be easily influenced. They are gullible. They can be easily influenced by people because of that need for attention, that need to impress. So it's easy for them to be deceived. It's easy for them to be led on or influenced by other people and circumstances around them. And finally, they consider relationships to be more intimate than they actually are. So someone who is histrionic may overvalue or overestimate the level of intimacy that exists between them and their friend. They are so over the moon about a friendship or relationship, which actually is not as intense and as close as they make it to seem. So they consider relationships to be more intimate than they actually are. And the last in the clusters of DSM-5, the cluster C, we have the avoidant personality disorder. And this is characterized by a pervasive pattern of social inhibition, feelings of inadequacy, and hypersensitivity to negative evaluation. So these are people that in growing up from childhood, we can make inferences of where they probably had abusive trainings or environments, a lot of trauma, a lot of criticism. And so they grow up feeling that they are lacking in something. That feeling of being inadequate, being useless, that feeling of not meeting the mark, and that makes them to withdraw. They don't seek to be around people. They are so sensitive to criticism. Any little thing that is said makes them feel quite useless, so to speak. So they avoid occupational activities that would involve interpersonal contact because they are afraid that if they are working with people, they are in corporate environments, they will always be the ones making the mistake. They will always be criticized. Whatever they do will be rejected, and their boss will not appreciate their work and all that. So they avoid occupational activities that would involve a lot of interpersonal contact, having to deal with different people and having them to evaluate whatever you do. They are unwilling to get involved with people unless they are certain that you are liked, like they are liked. So unless they are certain that you would like them, unless they are sure, fully sure that you like them, that you admire them, they find it difficult to make any attempts of getting involved or developing a rapport or relationship. They show restraint within intimate relationships because of the fear of being shamed or ridiculed. They are preoccupied with being criticized or rejected. They are inhibited in their new interpersonal situations because of feelings of inadequacy. So they may have the talent, they may have the potential, but in new environments, new situations, they would not want to take uh, initiative because they are afraid that they are not adequate enough, they are not up to standard enough to be able to do that. Then they view themselves as socially inept, personally unappealing, or inferior to others. So that is what is characteristic of the avoidant personality disorder. And usually people that form insecure avoidant personalities or attachments, so sorry, insecure avoidant attachments in childhood could go up to develop, avoidant personality disorders. Then finally, we have the dependent personality disorders, the last but one, dependent personality disorder. This is characterized by a pervasive and excessive need for others to take care of them. They are always looking for people to take care of them. They are submissive, so overly submissive and clingy. They are afraid when people that they believe are their supply, their source of survival are taken away from them. So a pervasive and excessive need to be taken care of that leads to submissive and clingy behavior and fears of separation. They struggle to make personal decisions, or so they are indecisive. They are filled with a lot of fears, a lot of doubts about making a decision. They will need somebody to make the decision for them. So a lot of advice, they'll seek a lot of advice. And so seeking advice is normal, is something that is helpful, seeking counsel. But such people will seek a lot of advice and counsel and reassurance before they are able to take an action. So you'd find that with all the assurance they get, with all the advice and counsel they get, they may end up not undertaking the activity or task because they still fear that they are not capable. So except you do it for them or you do it with them, they will not be able to do it. They need others to assume responsibility for major areas of their life. And they have difficulty expressing disagreement with others because they fear that if they disagree with you, they will lose your support and your approval. And they are dependent. Their survival, so to speak, is tied to the fact that somebody is taking care of them, somebody is in charge of their life, somebody is there that they can run to. They have difficulty initiating projects or doing things on their own, and they are unrealistically preoccupied with fears of being left alone. So, as I mentioned, quite similar to the borderline personality disorder, and so would avoid or try as much as possible to avoid anything that would mean that they are being separated from the one that they are submissive to or clingy to. And finally, we have the obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is a personality disorder different from the OCD, obsessive compulsive disorders. With obsessive compulsive personality disorder, OCPD, it's characterized by a pervasive pattern of preoccupation with orderliness, so similar to OCD, perfectionism, and mental and interpersonal control at the expense of flexibility, openness, and efficiency. So someone with OCPD is so much focused on perfectionism, orderliness that is beyond normal. So rather than being efficient or flexible, they want it to be done perfectly. Preoccupied with details, rules, lists, order, organization, and schedules to the extent that the major point, the major essence of an activity is lost on them because their focus is on perfectionism. And this their perfectionism, this their inflexibility affects how they are able to carry on their daily, responsibilities and complete certain assignments or tasks. They are excessively devoted to work and productivity to the exclusion of leisure activities and friendships. So you would find that someone with OCPD may struggle to include leisure time or make time for friendships and all that because it's seen to be something that will not help them to be the perfect person that they want to be. It's a distraction really to them. They are so devoted to their work that they do. They want to achieve the highest of performance, the perfect performance, such that they can't make room for any friendship or leisure activity. They are overly conscientious, that's focused on detail, focused on patterns and routines, scrupulous and inflexible about matters of morality, ethics, and values. And finally, they are reluctant to delegate tasks. So they would find it difficult to let someone else do the work or delegate a responsibility or task because they feel that the person cannot do it in that perfect way that they would want it to be done. So unless you will do it as they are describing it to be done, as they would want it to be done, as far as you can follow the same process they want you to follow, then they can delegate. If not, they would rather do it by themselves and do it to please their expectation. So these are the 10 personality disorders as we find in the DSM-5, an overview of all these. And I hope that it's giving you some understanding of personality disorders and how we can spot a few of the symptoms here and there in ourselves and in other people. As I mentioned, this is not a lesson for diagnostic purposes. It's just to give an insight into personality disorders and what they are as we end our series on understanding personality. I'm grateful that you made time to join us. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you share the video, you subscribe to the channel, share the videos to other people, and I'm glad that you do that. Thank you so much and enjoy your time.